in the vast, cold expanse of the Atacama Desert in Chile. High on a desolate plateau, under skies so clear they'd make a diamond jealous, sits an array of dishes pointing skyward. Think of them as Earth's giant, metallic ears, straining to hear the universe. Not the real, incredible Atacama Large Millimeter Submillimeter Array, or ALMA, that you'd actually find there, but something similar for our story, maybe even more ambitious, the Atacama Grand Observatory, or AGO. And it's here, in our story, that humanity first heard it coming. A whisper from a totally unremarkable patch of sky, a sector they called Kepler Omega 7, a name that, just like the observatory in this tale, exists only in the chilling what-if we're about to explore. What they picked up wasn't random noise. It was a pattern. And it was pointed right at Earth. Life on Earth is humming along as usual, its usual mix of triumphs and troubles, mostly unaware of the silent watch kept by places like the AGO. Dr. Aries Thorne, a veteran radio astronomer known for being almost obsessively meticulous, was in charge of a deep sky survey. His team was mapping faint, ancient hydrogen signals, echoes from the dawn of time, almost like cosmic archaeologists sifting through the universe's oldest dust. Kepler Omega 7 was just supposed to be a control patch, predictably, beautifully blank. The first blip was almost missed. A faint, rhythmic pulse, buried deep in the cosmic microwave background, like a single heartbeat in a roaring crowd. Most computer programs would have just written it off as instrument static, some echo from Earth. But a ghost knew, and for our story, fictional quantum-entangled processors flagged it. Thorne, skeptical at first, told them to zoom in, focus the scan. What came back was impossible. It was a signal, no doubt about it, and definitely artificial. Not just a simple ping, but a complex, layered thing full of mathematical constants, prime numbers, and something like a musical scale, repeating every 17 minutes or so. Imagine expecting a simple knock at the door and instead hearing an entire orchestra. It was, well, a song. Dr. Lena Hansen, a brilliant but kind of controversial xenolinguist and astrobiologist brought onto the AGO team, half-jokingly called it the canticle. The source, Kepler Omega 7, was, according to every star chart, a complete blank. No stars, no nebulae, not even any big rogue planets for thousands of light-years. And yet, from this emptiness, something was broadcasting with enough energy to rival a small galaxy if it kept it up. Its precision was terrifying. No drift, no fading in its mathematical purity. It was like the universe itself had learned to count, and to sing with perfect pitch. News, though carefully managed, started to trickle out. The world's reaction? A pretty predictable mix of wild excitement, disbelief, and a creeping sense of dread. This was it. The moment humanity had wondered about for ages. First contact. Or, maybe more like overhearing something huge. Now, in reality, astronomers are super cautious, analyzing things like potential biosignatures from exoplanets such as K2-18b with tools like the James Webb Space Telescope. But the canticles in our story? That was something else entirely, a direct, structured, powerful broadcast. Real fast radio bursts, which might come from things like magnetars, unleash crazy energy in milliseconds, but that canticles were sustained, intricate, like a continuous, complex broadcast. Government scrambled. Scientists held emergency meetings. The UN quickly threw together a Xena response committee. For a brief moment, humanity seemed united by awe and a tiny, growing prickle of fear. The canticle was beautiful, almost hauntingly so. Its mathematical pattern seemed to hint at universal truths, its melodies resonated with an alien, yet undeniable, sense of order. Dr. Hansen, working non-stop with a global team of code breakers, mathematicians, and musicians, felt they were close to understanding. "It's not just a signal," she announced in a hushed global address, "it's an intellect. It's patient." But some things were unsettling. The signal was adaptive. When AGO, in a strictly off-the-books experiment that Thorne absolutely hated, sent a powerful pulse of prime numbers back towards Kepler Omega 7, the canticle stopped. For 17 minutes, the cosmos just held its breath. Then, it started again, but slightly changed. It had woven humanity's sequence into its melody, harmonized with it, and then expanded on it with a complexity that made their attempt look like a child's drawing next to a masterpiece. It was learning. Or maybe it was showing it had known all along. This ability to adapt, to seemingly effortlessly process new information, was beyond any science Earth had. This fictional canticles was nothing like any real unexplained signal, like the recently spotted ASCAP J1832-0911 that sends out radio waves and X-rays every 44 minutes. That one's a fascinating mystery, sure, but it doesn't suggest this kind of complex, adaptive intelligence. The real signals, while mind-boggling and pointing to new physics, don't talk back. They're like mysterious notes in a bottle, not a two-way conversation. Thorne, lost in endless streams of data, grew thinner, more haunted. He wasn't sleeping. He'd stopped going to the celebratory press conferences. He was focused on the energy readings. The sheer power coming from Kepler Omega 7 was steadily, almost invisibly, increasing. It was a crescendo, building with agonizing slowness. He tried to warn them. He presented his findings to the Zena Response Committee, his voice raw. "This isn't communication as we know it," he pleaded. "Think of a whale song, beautiful, complex, but it's often a prelude to something huge moving through the deep. We are not being spoken to, we are simply in the path of something vast." His warnings were noted, filed away, and mostly ignored in the global excitement about an upcoming chatter with aliens. Everyone was hoping for the best, for a new era. Sci-fi often plays with different alien intentions, benevolent teachers, indifferent forces, or outright invaders. In this story, humanity chose to believe in the best-case scenario, even as evidence for something else started to pile up. The popular dark forest idea, that civilization stay quiet to avoid predators, was brushed off as too gloomy when faced with the canticle's apparent beauty. But Thorne knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that the music was about to stop. And something else was about to begin. The first subtle signs were brushed off as unrelated glitches, just the usual background noise of a complicated world. In our made-up scenario, a series of tiny, almost unnoticeable tech hiccups started rippling across the planet, like small tremors before an earthquake. GPS satellites had tiny, split-second timing errors. Deep-sea communication cables reported phantom data surges. Stock markets flickered with ghost trades, too small to set off alarms, but they were there. These are, naturally, just creative elements for our story. No such global tech interference tied to an alien signal has ever actually happened. Dr. Thorne, though, he saw a pattern. He connected every event with tiny fluctuations in the canticle's energy signature. The signal wasn't just getting louder, it was resonating. Like it was plucking invisible strings woven into the fabric of Earth's technology, as if our tech was an instrument being finely tuned by an unseen hand. He presented his findings again, this time with a desperate edge in his voice. "It's a tuning fork, he tried to explain to a mostly skeptical panel. Kepler Omega-7 isn't just broadcasting, it's preparing an instrument. And that instrument is us. Our civilization. His theories were just too wild, too far from the hopeful story of peaceful contact that had gripped the world. Dr. Hansen, even though she was still deep in trying to decode the canticle, started to feel Thorne's unease. The signal's adaptive responses had become too quick, too insightful. It felt less like a conversation and more like an examination, as if a biologist were prodding a specimen to see how it reacted. The mathematical structures are changing, Lena confessed to Aries in a late-night, encrypted call. It's not just showing off universal constants anymore. It's probing. Asking questions in a language we only partly get, but the questions seem to be about our basic physics, our biology, even our network consciousness. The idea of an alien signal being a potential threat, maybe even a cyber attack, isn't entirely new in speculative chats. Earth's growing dependence on interconnected tech, in this tale, becomes its biggest weakness. While there are real-world worries about space security, they're usually about Earth-based threats or space junk, not aliens messing with our systems. Then came what we'll call the Auroral Whispers. In this story we're crafting, the northern and southern lights started acting weird. Instead of their usual gentle, ethereal dance, they pulsed in time with the canticle's 17-minute cycle. The colors shifted, getting deeper, more vibrant, sometimes flaring with shades never seen in Earth's atmosphere before, like the sky itself was trying to sing along. Ham radio operators reported picking up strange, harmonic overtones within these auroral displays, echoes of the canticle, distorted and amplified. These events, of course, are completely fictional, just to build that growing sense of unease. The scientific community, while still mostly focused on the chance of communication, started to split. Factions formed, those who believed the signal was a friendly, complex greeting, and a smaller, growing group, including Thorne and Hansen, who feared it was a prelude to something unimaginable and possibly devastating. The media, sensing a shift in the story, cranked up the volume on the debate, fueling public anxiety. "We are like children playing with a live wire," Thorne stated in a leaked internal memo that went viral. "We assume its silence means it's safe, its patterns mean it's friendly. We have no way to understand an intelligence that might operate on scales of energy and intent that make our entire existence look tiny." His words struck a chord with a growing nervousness, a primal fear of the unknown that the initial excitement had briefly pushed aside. The canticle itself just kept getting stronger. Its energy output, once a faint whisper, was now a roar in the radio spectrum, forcing many other astronomical observations to be retuned or just abandoned. It wasn't just detectable by the massive dishes of the AGO anymore, hobbyists with good amateur setups could now faintly pick up its main rhythm. It was as if some colossal entity was drawing nearer, its breath turning into a gale. Dr. Hansen made a breakthrough, or so she thought at first. She found a repeating sequence in the canticle, a complex code that seemed to pop up every 300 cycles. It wasn't mathematical or musical like the rest of the signal. It was, she guessed, a key, or maybe a warning, like a final, cryptic sentence at the end of a long message. Working like mad, her team managed to isolate and partially translate a piece of it. The translation was chillingly simple, but totally baffling. The threshold is reached. The attunement begins. Before Hansen could even share these findings, before the world could start to figure out what they meant, the canticle changed. The intricate melodies, the mathematical progressions, the haunting beauty, it all just stopped. The 17-minute cycle broke. For one full minute, there was absolute silence from Kepler Omega-7. An unnatural, deafening quiet across all monitored frequencies. Thorne, watching the readouts at AGO, felt his heart stop. He knew this silence. It was the deep breath before the storm. "It's here," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the hum of the observatory's cooling systems. "Seal the facility. God help us all, it's here." Then, from the direction of Kepler Omega-7, the energy readings on every instrument at AGO, and at observatories worldwide, spiked beyond anything measurable. It wasn't a signal anymore. It was a wall of pure, focused energy, moving at an impossible speed, or maybe not moving at all, but simply arriving. This wasn't like the known physics of magnetar flares or FRBs. This was something that, in our fictional scenario, broke all the rules of science, like discovering the laws of gravity suddenly had an off switch. The crescendo had ended. The wave had been unleashed. If you're finding this trip into the unknown pretty gripping, why not hit that like button? It really helps us figure out what kind of cosmic mysteries you want us to explore. Alright, back to the story unfolding. The wave. It wasn't sound, or light, or any kind of radiation we know, yet it showed up on every sensor designed to detect those things, and then promptly fried them. In our story, it hit Earth not like an explosion, but like a presence. A ripple in the very fabric of existence. The first and most immediate effect was the total and instant collapse of all advanced technology. Imagine every light switch on the planet, every computer chip, every engine, being flipped off by a single, invisible hand, all at the exact same millisecond. Now, this is pure fiction. Remember, no real-world event or scientific theory backs up a planet-wide, signal-induced tech wipeout like this. Satellites in orbit didn't just go quiet, they vanished from radar, as if yanked from the sky. GPS systems everywhere blinked out at the exact same moment. Power grids across the globe cascaded into failure, not with the sputtering of dying transformers, but with a sudden, total stop of all current. Cars coasted to silent halts. Planes, just moments before cruising at altitude, became gliders in a sky that no longer offered them any guidance. The internet, all of human digital knowledge and connection, just ceased to be in a single, silent microsecond. At the Atacama Grand Observatory, Thorne and his small crew were briefly shielded by the facility's deep underground construction and its independent, hardened power systems, again, fictional elements for our tale. But the screen showing the outside world went black. The readouts from the surface antennas flatlined. Then, a low, all-encompassing hum filled the air, a sound that seemed to vibrate not just your ears, but your very bones. Dr. Hansen, stuck in a UN facility in Geneva, experienced it differently. One moment she was arguing with a panel of stunned generals, the next, the lights went out, the screens died, and a strange, orange glow seeped through the reinforced windows. The air itself felt thick, charged, like right before a lightning strike, but a lightning strike that never came, replaced instead by a suffocating pressure. That erasure, as survivors would later call it, started small, anecdotally. Remote weather stations, automated deep-sea buoys, isolated research outposts, they just stopped reporting in. At first, people assumed it was part of the general tech collapse. But then came the first eyewitness accounts, fragmented, terrified, broadcast over hastily put together, old-fashioned shortwave radios powered by hand cranks or scavenged batteries. A panicked report from a cargo ship in the mid-Pacific, its diesel engine somehow still working, something is happening to the sea. It's smoothing out. Like glass. And Henderson Island, it's gone. Not sunk. gone. There's nothing there. Just flat, calm water where it was minutes ago. Henderson Island, a real, remote, uninhabited place, serves in our story as an early, terrifying piece of data. Then, a small coastal town in Western Australia. A ham radio operator, his voice cracking with terror. The sky, it's like the color is draining out of it. And the edge of town, it's fading. The houses, the trees, they're becoming transparent. Oh God, it's moving. It's not destroying them, it's unmaking them. His transmission ended in a burst of static. The wave wasn't an explosion of fire and force. It was a negation. Where it passed, things just stopped existing, with a quiet, horrifying efficiency that no known physics could explain. It was as if reality itself was being selectively edited, like a cosmic delete key sweeping across the globe. There was no debris, no rubble, no radiation. Just absence. This, you guessed it, is a key part of our cosmic horror story, completely unsupported by any scientific fact. Major cities were next. From a hill overlooking a metropolis, let's imagine a fictional version of a city like Sydney or San Francisco. Survivors watched in numb disbelief. The wave didn't roll in like some energy tsunami. Instead, districts would start to shimmer, their outlines blurring as if seen through intense heat haze. Then, slowly, almost gracefully, buildings, streets, parks, everything in that zone would turn translucent, ghostly, before finally winking out of existence. The process was silent, except for the distant, horrified cries of those watching from afar. There was no defense. How could there be? Humanity was facing something that wasn't just destructive, but decreative. Military jets scrambled, their pilots reporting they could see the erasures before their own aircraft simply vanished from radar and sight, their radio calls cutting off mid-word. Nuclear arsenals, our ultimate threat against human enemies, were useless, their sophisticated electronics dead. Even if they could have been launched, what would they target? A phenomenon that seemed to operate outside the known laws of cause and effect. It was like trying to punch a fog. Dr. Thorne, watching the few working seismic sensors in the Agos bunker, saw the Earth's crust react as if huge masses were being instantly removed. Not violently, but with a slow, bewildered settling. "It's not an attack," he murmured, his face lit by the grim, red emergency lights. "It's a harvest. Or a reset. As if the planet itself is being wiped clean, like an old chalkboard. Our scientific understanding of the universe, built up so carefully over centuries, was suddenly meaningless. Gravity still worked, but matter could be unmade. Light still traveled, but its very source could be snuffed out without a trace. The fundamental constants of nature seemed to be optional, like rules in a game that could be changed without warning. This profound defiance of all scientific understanding is a classic trait of cosmic horror, highlighting just how terrifyingly insignificant human knowledge can be when faced with truly alien phenomena. The weirdness of it all just escalated. In some erased zones, witnesses reported seeing fleeting, impossible shapes flicker into view for mere seconds, shapes that twisted the eye and mind, hinting at dimensions beyond human understanding. Strange, melodic chimes, echoes of the long-dead canticle, were sometimes heard on the wind, seeming to come from the erased spaces themselves, as if the wave left behind an auditory ghost. As the wave moved on, its front an invisible, unstoppable line across continents and oceans, the remaining pockets of humanity were thrown back to a pre-industrial age, but with the terrifying knowledge of what they were up against. It wasn't an enemy they could fight. It was the universe itself, or something that controlled it, deciding that humanity's time was up. Earth's final moments weren't going to be a blaze of glory, but a slow, silent, and utterly inexplicable fade. Days bled into weeks, though the very idea of time felt broken, unreliable. The wave's advance wasn't steady. It seemed to pause, to shift, its invisible boundary expanding in one area while bizarrely retreating in another, only to surge forward again with renewed, silent intent. It was like watching a stain spread across a map, but a stain that could choose its own path, rewriting the world beneath it. There was no pattern anyone could see in its targets, other than a slow, methodical swallowing of the globe. Some people guessed it was avoiding areas of extreme geothermal activity, others that it was drawn to certain types of rock, but these were just the desperate stabs in the dark of a species trying to find logic in the completely illogical. The few remaining shortwave broadcasts painted a grim, broken picture of global collapse. Whole continents went silent. The voices that were left sounded hollowed out by despair, by the crushing realization of their own insignificance. There were no dramatic last stands, no heroic sacrifices that could change anything. Humanity had run into something not just beyond its power, but beyond its ability to even understand. This is the heart of cosmic horror, the terror not of evil, but of an indifference so vast it makes human existence a fleeting, irrelevant speck. In our fictional Atacama Grand Observatory bunker, Dr. Aries Thorne and the handful of survivors with him became the unwilling archivists of a dying world. Their hardened systems, which we invented to withstand extreme earthly disasters, offered a temporary shelter, a fragile bubble of rapidly dwindling power and sanity. They could only listen as the silence grew. The seismic sensors showed the planet itself groaning under the shifting, unimaginable forces, as if its very structure was being subtly rewritten. Dr. Lena Hansen, who everyone thought was lost in Geneva, managed one final, broken transmission. She'd found a working ham radio in the ruins of a nearby village, powered by a sputtering generator. Her voice was weak, full of static and a deep weariness. "It's not erasing, it's changing," she broadcast, her words barely clear. "The air in the silent zones, it feels different. The light bends, strangely. I saw something, where the lake used to be. Not a structure. A condition. A state of being I can't describe. It's not for us. None of this is for us." Her signal faded out, replaced by the whisper of empty static. Her words hinted at a terrifying idea, that the wave wasn't just simple destruction, but a kind of transformation, a terraforming process for an environment, a physics, completely alien to human life. Earth wasn't being destroyed, but repurposed, like a house being renovated for occupants with entirely different needs and senses. This idea pops up in some sci-fi stories where alien actions aren't necessarily hostile in a way humans would understand, but just the result of vastly different needs or points of view. The bizarre and cataclysmic events took on new, stranger dimensions. In areas that had been erased, some observers flying reckon salvaged, propeller-driven planes, before they too were inevitably taken, reported that the ground underneath wasn't just bare. It was smooth. Impossibly smooth, as if the very texture of the land had been polished away by some cosmic Zamboni, leaving behind a featureless, matte surface that didn't reflect any light. In other places, the plants and animals that had miraculously survived on the edges of the wave's path began to mutate at an accelerated, impossible rate, not into monsters, but into forms that were just wrong. Colors shifted, biological structures reconfigured into nonsensical arrangements, as if life itself was trying to read a new, incomprehensible instruction manual and getting all the words mixed up. Again, these are entirely made-up details, meant to deepen the mystery and the horror. The sky, too, kept changing. The stars themselves seemed dimmer, less distinct, as if seen through a subtle, pervasive filter that was slowly drawing a curtain across the cosmos. The familiar constellations, humanity's oldest map, began to feel alien, distant. One of Thorne's young technicians, a brilliant astrophysicist named Anya Sharma, spent her final days staring at the august deep space optical sensors, which were, for the moment, still partly working because of their isolation. She wasn't looking at Earth. She was looking at Kepler Omega 7. The energy signature of the wave's origin point hadn't faded. If anything, it had stabilized, emitting a soft, consistent glow across multiple spectra. "It's still there," she said, her voice flat. "It's watching. Or waiting. Maybe this is what it does. Maybe it's a gardener. And we were just weeds." The idea of cosmic tripwires or ancient alien sentinels, like you see in some sci-fi, comes to mind, that humanity, by reaching a certain tech level, maybe by broadcasting its existence so clearly when the canticle was first found, had triggered some pre-programmed response. Not an invasion by fleets of ships, like we so often imagine, but a much more fundamental and terrifying kind of intervention. Or perhaps, as some fringe theories about why we haven't found aliens, the Fermi paradox like the dark forest suggest, announcing our presence was simply an invitation to an indifferent, or brutally efficient, cosmic process. But it's really important to remember, these are all fictional ideas. There's no scientific evidence for any of this, no destructive alien signals or interventions. The power in the AGO bunker finally started to fail. The lights flickered, the air system sputtered. Thorne knew their borrowed time was running out. He gathered the few remaining crew members in the central control room. There were no big speeches, no tearful goodbyes. Just a shared, unspoken understanding. They had witnessed the end of their world, not with a bang, but with a chilling, incomprehensible whisper that became an all-consuming silence. We really get into the biggest what ifs of the cosmos here. If you want to keep exploring the edges of science, speculation, and the profoundly unknown, think about subscribing and hitting that notification bell so you don't miss out. In those final moments, as the last emergency lights in the Atacama Grand Observatory dimmed, Aries Thorne found himself looking at a single, frozen image on a failing monitor, a star chart of Kepler Omega 7. That supposedly empty sector of space. The source. The story we've walked through today, they heard it coming, Earth's final moments before the alien wave, is completely a work of fiction. Think of it as a thought experiment wrapped up in cosmic horror, designed to make you ask questions, not to give answers. The Atacama Grand Observatory, Kepler Omega 7, the Canticle, Dr. Thorne, Dr. Hansen, and the terrifying alien wave itself, they're all made up for this speculative tale. You should know that as of June 2025, humanity hasn't detected any verifiable intelligent alien signals like this, nor have we experienced any cataclysmic events caused by extraterrestrials. Our telescopes keep scanning the skies, and the mysteries they turn up, like those puzzling fast radio bursts or the strange long-period transients, point to fascinating natural events and maybe even new physics, not to impending doom from outer space. And yet, stories like this one tap into a really primal curiosity and a deep unease. What if? What if the silence of the universe isn't empty, but just patient? What if our understanding of physics, of reality itself, is just a tiny, local rulebook for a much larger, stranger, and potentially terrifying cosmic game? The universe, after all, is under no obligation to make sense to us. It doesn't owe us an explanation for its mysteries. The fictional Earth in our story fell silent, not under the boot of a conquering alien species, but under the weight of an event so alien it couldn't even be defined. It wasn't necessarily an act of malice, but maybe just a cosmic process, as indifferent to humanity as a scientist might be to bacteria on a slide, or a gardener to weeds in a field. The ultimate horror wasn't destruction, but the realization of being utterly, completely irrelevant in the face of something truly, mind-bogglingly other. What really lies out there, in that unimaginable vastness between the stars? We keep listening, searching, wondering. And perhaps, it's in that very act of wondering, in acknowledging that profound mystery, that we truly define our own place in the cosmos, no matter how small or fleeting it might be. The search for answers goes on, both in science and in the limitless landscapes of our imagination. So, what do you think is waiting in the silence?